So many of these methods are done just as methods. This is what I do. I don't take Lynn to mean it that way. Okay. So then I don't disagree. Where I disagree is on the keyboard notion. I want to say you can only play part of the keyboard at a time. I think to think is an orchestra. You can't explain an orchestra, right? The reason people go to hear an orchestra is because even the tape is not anything like what it sounds like when you're surrounded by the sound of the orchestra. That's really the main difference I have. But then it gets down into the detail. So Lynn said that when I walked in the room and I was already different, that was a new self. I'm saying, no, that was me. Now, it was very new to me because when I was, I don't know what, 3 days old already, part of me got very discouraged and it didn't ever recover. But that's the point I'm trying to make. No, that's not a new self. That was me. Or when somebody is focusing and they arrive somewhere, I will say, oh. So is that relational or is that focusing? It used to be that we tried not to react to the content because it was like saying, well, when you get this kind of a thing, then we approve, and therefore you better get this kind of thing all the time. Now I'm through with that. I like to show my response to everything that goes on. So when the silence is too long, I may cough or move around noisily in my chair because I don't want to be lost track of. I want to be there. So to me, the person focusing, even silently, is just as relational as it is when we play and we hope that the person reaches inside themselves more. So for me, that comes from the inside. Yes, it's your turn.
I like your idea of the orchestra. Of course, there are many instruments and many dimensions. And of course, you know, Gene, that I'm not talking about a method. You know that.
No, that's why I said
I'm
right
talking
from the start.
I am talking about skills, though.
Yeah.
I have a new idea
Yes,
that along in contemporary psychoanalysis, we've decided that technique is out, because technique is sort of a one-size-fits-all. In a new sensibility in psychoanalysis, there's many different papers and discussions about how we don't believe in technique. But then that leaves young clinicians learning all of these theories, sitting down with difficult patients in clinics saying, what do I do? What do I do? And being completely at sea. My idea is that every theory has a something to do that's implied by the theory. And the something to do I call skills. And skills are different than techniques because you have a repertoire of skills like a musician does. But then when the musician is improvising, all of those skills, all that knowledge of scales, knowledge of the instrument, is all in there. But the musician isn't necessarily thinking about all of those things. So that's what I'm calling skills. Right. It's very important to have skills, and this continuum gives just a little sort of sketch of the kinds of skills that we want therapists to develop. The skills of helping people to find themselves inside in simple ways, like how is that here? And the skills of asking into something. What is that like when you say that to me? What was that just happened now between us? That kind of question. Or, oh, that sounds like the thing that you were saying the other week about blah, blah, blah. Or it's a such and such kind of feeling. and then waiting to see if that does something. Or the skills of back and forth talking about what I call talking about the you and me of the relationship, which is very, very important thing to be able to do, and very, very difficult to do in our culture, very rare to do. So it's very rare to be listened to the way client-centered people listen and Jean listens. And it's also very rare to have the kind of intimate exchange where you can talk with another person about your deep longings having to do with them, your disappointments with them, your wishes for them, to try out new behaviors with them, to fight with them when you've never fought before, to relax with them when you've never relaxed before, to talk about how meaningful that last thing was, whatever it is that happened between you. When Jean was so shy in the beginning in therapy, we would want a therapist that would be aware of his shyness and be very tender with that shyness.
Be very what?
Tender with the shyness. And also want maybe to bring out a little bit more, to find a little more freedom there. I also want to say that I agree that it isn't a new, it's not that a new us makes a new me, but there's, as I develop, there's the sense of new experience and new living, and there's every moment a new kind of me. But of course that me is all me. But the feeling of a new me, such an important feeling, the feeling of being reborn in this moment, the feeling of something new in me just coming to life, and how that happens. Jean, want to say something, or shall we ask them?
I wouldn't like my therapist to have decided what I needed, which is one of the dangers in theories and methods. But other than that, I would agree that it would have been nice if he could have done that. Then he probably would have seen me shrink down into my chair and he wouldn't have done it again. But I would say, from my point of view, it would be good for him to know how to do that. He didn't know how to do that. But then again, he was extremely relational because he was always like this, you know, trying to hear and whatnot. The difference that I'm looking for is to have, what I mean by the orchestra is to have the relation, the relating and the method, any other method, together. You wouldn't want somebody to relate to you not from deep down inside on Tuesdays, and then to sit there silently and not feel you while they're going inside themselves on Wednesdays, if you see what I mean. Or in the first half of the hour, in the second half of the hour. Because you would be just as much there every moment with them while they're silent. And if not, then do something. Make a noise at least. Don't let them sink over there in autism, because now we're focusing. And then later relate from yourself, all right, but don't not need them to go inside to get the depth of what's going on, because now we're relating. And you don't mean it that way. When you say we're playing, you include the fact that you would like your person to sense themselves playing, and not just playing with you, but sense themselves playing. And that's as much as you're telling us, that, oh, this might be something, it's a new way, that, or at least a fresh way, that they can feel themselves. So the difference and the sameness should be relatively clear, but let's open that.
Okay, let me say just a couple of things there. One thing is that that whatever we're doing on this keyboard, we want to be checking, and we learn that from focusing. And so it's wonderful. I don't know if Lois, with her improvisation, said, "How is it now the room seems different?" That would, I don't know if she said that, but that would be the kind of thing that we know to do, to say, what happened there, or how is that now, or some way of the finding the place from, and what's changed and what's needed from there. So that checking is always an important kind of thing, although you may wait until after the whole play is sort of has its own form before you do that. The other thing I just wanted to say is when you said you don't want the therapist to decide what you need, there's a principle that we have in focusing about putting something out or living something and being so sensitive to, is it needed? I'm doing this, but I know that this isn't going to be the specificity of the implicit intricacy. But I'm saying, oh, I think this is needed, and I make that movement. And then, as Jean said years ago, and I always remembered this, a sensitive therapist isn't one that knows. A sensitive therapist is one that pays very, very close attention to the next thing that happens, not only verbally, but non-verbally, after the therapist is doing something, being something, attending to something. And so that's a very, very important principle. And I don't see these as two separate methods at all, but as one whole way of making a relationship with this one deep inside.